former minister and founder of Something or Other Publishing, Wade Franson, is the host of Created in the Image of God, a series that examines the role of religion in society, from messianic returns to the emotive responses transmitted through our culture. Wade fearlessly addresses reality claims from all directions, objectively exploring their compatibility with Holy Scripture. Joining him is Daniel Sanderson, CEO of Planksift, an international philosophy and cultural media outlet, helping emerging thought leaders with personal branding by co-creating organic content. Episode 37, Grieving and Growing, with Alise Cortez and Stratton Horres.
Welcome, everybody. This is another episode, and I'm happy to kick this one off. Dr. Alise Cortez, she's somebody that I've met before, and I'm very excited to have her into the studio. Dr. Alise Cortez is the Chief Purpose Officer of Alise Cortez and Associates, a consultancy firm aiming to invigorate meaning and purpose. Over the last 25 years, she has dedicated her experience to the human capital and organizational industry, with an ultimate goal of helping companies, leaders, and individuals from around the world make the most of their lives. Currently, she's concentrating on aiding those who have experienced loss and find their purpose again through her upcoming book, Coloring Life: How Loss Invites Us to Live More Vibrant Lives. With a remarkable career that spans 4 decades, Stratton House is the next guest. I'm going to talk to him in a little bit, if he can make it onto the show. If he can't, that's okay. Okay, we're going to keep going forward with Dr. Alise Cortez, and I'm going to bring her into the studio right now. Alise, how you doing today?
Beyond belief. I'm with you, Daniel.
Beyond belief. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, almost maybe like a nice subtitle for the show. maybe I might get vetoed. I don't know, but
beyond belief.
Right. Yeah. Well, at least we like to start each one of these shows. We feel that this kind of sets the tone for the show, and so we like to ask a little bit more about you. We want people to connect with you and where you came from, your upbringing, and this type of thing. So tell us a little bit about your early years. Like, what was the young little girl like growing up? What was the pre-Dr. Alise Cortez? What was she like in her early years?
Well, you wouldn't have never imagined that I went the whole doctor route for sure. I came from the Northwest. My mother was married 5 times by the time she was 28 years old, and I was in 2nd grade when we got number 5. And I saw the revolving door of people that came through our lives, and there was a lot of movement. There's a lot of solitude. Quiet contemplation. Wasn't a very good student until when I was in kindergarten. My teacher said, "You're the stupidest kid I've ever had in all the years I've been teaching," which was a catalyst for me. It was a wake-up call. I believed her. So I thought, well, if I'm stupid, I'm going to have to work harder than the other kids. So I developed this over-the-top system to study because I thought I had to work harder than all the other kids. And guess what happened? I got really, really amazing good grades and discovered I was a pretty good student, which is really what set the course of my life. I am a student. I'm a lifelong learner. So that's where, I would say my life started from. My parents, when my mom married number 5, which was a jackpot, by the way, beautiful human being that totally altered and improved the course of our lives. She wouldn't have become who she became without him, and we wouldn't have the life that we did without him. But they were hard workers. My dad was a farmer, and they got into the restaurant business, another very hard industry. So what I really got out of my life, Daniel, which set the stage for so many things, is I got a hard work ethic. And I also got the notion that work isn't a bad 4-letter word. It's a part of life. It's a way of living. It's a way of being. And so much of what I'm out to do today really came from that experience, that work is something that you do to express yourself and to live. And that's why so much of the work that I do today is anchored in trying to improve that experience for so many people.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, I've often wondered about the work aesthetic, not aesthetic, but the just the work ethic in general as a truth measure, right? To kind of keep things out and remove and parse out the noise. What led you to the, I guess, to make the choice to jump into being like a public person, right? So you take from your private life into a public appearance, like on shows like this, and even just putting yourself out there as an author. What do you remember the demarcation line, or
I know exactly what it is. Yeah, great question, Daniel. Great question. Yeah, I thought you were going to ask something else about what kind of kicked off this whole career, but that specific question has a very specific answer. So I'd already been out speaking. I'd been speaking since, 2000 or so. But in 2014, I got it was an amazing year. So 2014, to put it all into context, I had completed some postdoc research around meaning, work, and identity that I was really excited about. I knew I was going to go to India that December to present the research at a conference and get published with it. I was going to spend 3 weeks in India, which was a bucket list thing for me. And then in November, I got the opportunity to create and present a workshop based on my brand new research around meaning and work and identity for a client. So I do this research, or I do this workshop for this client, and they loved it. I leave this workshop, I'm high as a kite, just so thrilled that, oh my gosh, this research landed. I did it. People loved it. And I'm driving home and the phone rings, and it's Voice America calling me. And they said, hey, we found you on LinkedIn, went to your website. We see that you're a speaker or a consultant that usually makes for a good radio show host. Would you like to host your own show?
Oh, yeah.
And Daniel, I held the phone from my ear because I went, this is all connected. The research, the India trip, this engagement that I just did, and now this phone call is all connected. So I had never thought about being a radio show host. It wasn't on my radar. But I thought, you know what? Let me put out what I care about and see who shows up for the conversation. And then once I did that, it became easier and easier to share my message in platforms like this on the other side of the mic.
Wow, great answer. That's really good. And I mean, what a place. Now, this is a plug for the show. What a place to bring it out. You can kind of let your wings open wide and be susceptible to the idea of those larger correlations in life, right? And yeah, that's beautiful. Okay, so you have a book coming out, and we've already touched on it, but could you tell us in a few words about the book? And then the reason why I'm asking is we're gonna play an ad for your book, but I want people to hear it from you. You know, what was the book about in maybe a sentence or two?
I will, absolutely. And I want to do two things if I can. It's related back to here we are on the, created in the image of God. My book touches on death, which is a really, really important part of life. My other books touch on purpose, which is another really important part of life. So the Coloring Life book that's coming out is really the book that shares a front row, very intimate seat of my experience of losing both my parents 28 days apart. And most importantly, what I really learned about living with vibrance from those losses, because I want the book to be, and it is really an invitation for readers. My sharing of my loss is their therapy to grow and transform.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, kind of like you had to do the heavy lifting in your early elementary years. You'd figured it all out. So Alise Cortez is here to figure it all out, and she's done a lot of the work for you. And let's play that out.
It's funny the places life takes you when you follow what calls you deeply. This is a story of bewilderment, grief, loneliness, and healing. A comforting companion for people grieving their loss. Whether it's a loved one, a favorite pet, a marriage, or a career, sharing your story can be someone else's therapy. Dr. Alise Cortez presents Coloring Life: How Loss Invites Us to Live More Vibrant Lives. Pre-order now at soupllc.com. Let's connect and lift each other up.
Well, we've got Wade in the studio now, and he's very close to God right now. He's literally right next to the logo that says "created in the image of God." So he could be closer to God, I think, if he tilted his head over just a little bit more. But
oh no, it's the wrong direction of the screen.
and he's also got to name himself differently. He's under disguise of Ty Keynes today, so he's gonna have to change that. He's not incognito. But how'd you guys meet? What's going on here with you two? You guys have a history together. I want to know all about it.
Well, I got a call, I think, from a friend of mine, close friend at the time, about a project that Dr. Alise Cortez was involved in. And at the time I was in a leadership role, or I was being prepared for a leadership role within the corporation I was working in, completing my MBA, and I had gotten involved in this thing called the Society for Information Management. And the Society for Information Management has programs which are training grounds for CIOs, Chief Information Officers, Chief Technology Officers. And I was in that training program, and I was invited to participate in a project that this Dr. Alise Cortez was involved in for her PhD research. And I'll hand it over to Dr. Cortez now to tell a little bit about that interaction.
Very fond memories you've just stirred up there, Wade. Thank you very much. So yes, this would have been 2000 when I would have introduced this, maybe 2002 when I would have introduced it. So my PhD is in human development, and I wanted at the time, because I was working in information technology staffing, and I thought the people that I was meeting were like really incredible human beings. You know, here they are, they're changing the way that we communicate, practice healthcare, travel through the skies. You know, I mean, I was really impressed with the work that they were doing. And I wanted to know what they felt about their work and who they felt about themselves as a result. So I posed the research question, what's the meaning of work for you, and how does it relate to your sense of identity? And I wanted to be able to learn that about 25 information technology managers at the time, not CIOs, but managers, leaders of some time. So Wade was in that cohort. I approached SIM because, frankly, I thought it would be easier to get a cohort together by going through an organization. And the sponsor, Mike Rochelle, was like, yep, I can make that happen. So I interviewed these 25 people, and I remember distinctly our interview, Wade. I can just say, unequivocally, you won't be surprised, you were by far the most intense person that I met, the most, robust in your responses, the most complete, the most, let me take it another 16 steps further kind of thing. And it just stuck with me, so that research was the kickoff of so much of my life. But I remember doing that interview. I think it was in Mike's house, and that's how we started.
Yeah. And as you talk about it now, and I'm remembering your PhD work, which I want to get to in a moment, helped me with my own analysis, because you mentioned some challenging circumstances as a child with the revolving door of people in your life. And those who have read my first book know that I was actually kidnapped and smuggled out of the country and had this identity crisis. Am I American? Am I Swedish? Where do I belong? Does anybody even care? I ended up in an orphanage, lived in a tent in Alaska to get through my senior year, living in 20 below weather. So I had all these incredibly bizarre circumstances, and I was trying to self-analyze, not medicate, but self-analyze my way through this mess that was me and my life. And having somebody as an external party involved in that kind of analysis of who and what I am was a very, very helpful component that helped me later sort it all out and write it all down in that book, The People of the Sign. So thank you for that. But I want to ask now, what did that research, that PhD dissertation that you eventually completed, what kind of a springboard was that for you? How did that affect where you would later go, and how did it help you get there?
Yeah, I will tell you, and I really think about it as, an unfolding process. And, I just, every time that I've ever followed in that thing inside of me, I call it the internal divining rod. God's word or speech, whatever it is. Every time I did that and I stepped on the next lily pad that I was told to step on, then beautiful things happened and opened for me. So that research was one of those kind of things where I did it because I heard that I'm stepping on this next lily pad. And that's where it took me. So from there, I really got into, employee engagement kind of work. And then that really took me more into, that's what unfolded into the purpose journey that I've been on for the last, whatever it's been, 5+ years, helping now individuals and organizations do the same. So it was a tremendous opening spigot for me. And I knew it was going to yield something, but I just didn't know all the expressions that it was going to bring me to. And I would go on to say, Wade, that pretty much everything that I have done since then, all the books that I have written, the programs that I've done, and the consulting that I'm doing today, I would say absolutely was born from stepping into and being obedient to stepping on that lily pad and doing that research.
I have a question for you there, Alise. I'm curious about your research, and without giving too much of away, I don't know how much you hold on to it because it's consulting kind of methodology.
No, it's all open.
Yeah. So, like, how much of that is the recommendation of stepping on that lily pad, of doing hard work and committing, and then maybe step us through a little bit of how you take a typical person through a journey to self-discovery and growth within an organization. I'm curious about that.
Okay, so first let me situate that the work that I'm doing today is really largely with organizations, and so I'll do that on an organizational level, not with individuals per se. They get their journey as well along the way, but the overarching thing is going into an organization, which I've had some amazing experiences going into organizations that were either extremely well founded and they're very successful already financially, but maybe just kind of were stuck on various ways, or in other cases they hired me because they're hurting in some ways. They can't attract people, they can't keep them, they can't engage them. So the work that when I go into an organization, what that looks like is I'll go in and I'll do what I call a purpose and a culture assessment. And that's where I interview the key leaders and various people from the team. Everybody weighs in though, unless it's an enormous organization. And I ask them, what's the purpose of this organization? Why does it exist? Why should anybody care? What's the mission? How do you execute on that purpose? What are your values? And then what are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, et cetera, threats to the organization? That all gets surfaced. So we awaken to that. I have a sort of a formula through that. We awaken to all that. And then, from there we start then the process of, and this is so critical because purpose for anyone, individually, organizationally, has this sort of esoteric quality to it. It's the water you swim in. How do you actually distinguish water if you're a salmon, right? Mm-hmm. So the second part of that whole process is once they've actually given me the raw material of those answers, then I compile all that and I come back to the organization and say, okay, this is what I heard you say is the purpose of the organization. And I give them, a few bullet points and a few things that kind of came together. And then we wild alive scratch together to refine and bring those statements of purpose, mission, and vision and values together, so that it's that they're scratching that's important. They got it. Nobody can issue them those statements. The magic happens when they reach and they scratch to try to say what it is that these things mean to them. And once we do that,
yeah, that's a very Socratic dialectic kind of process, right?
It is. I knew you would get that and jam on that.
Well, why is that?
Because I know your mind. It's beautiful in there.
Well, no. Well, thank you. I mean, I've never looked at it, but
So I want to jump in real quick and highlight that something we may have missed earlier, that Dr. Cortez, and this is for our audience, of which I know there are a number of them out there. Dr. Cortez is giving away, or we're giving away, a copy of her book as a thank you to her as a guest and to the audience. So that's going to be based on the comment that she finds the most interesting, the most relevant, the funniest, whatever. She can elaborate on what she's looking for perhaps. But so those of you in the audience, please do check in the chat, get your comments in there, get your questions in there. And we can answer some of those questions as we go along. In the meantime, I want to jump back to this idea of the lily pad. I love that analogy. I don't know if I've ever shared with you my own similar analogy, which is walking the gangplank. I've used that analogy of stepping off the gangplank, and you only do it when you have a knife at your back because there's sharks in the water, right? Otherwise, you just stay there frozen on the gangplank, but you're not going anywhere, right? I love the lily pad analogy. It's a kinder, gentler version. And it also has that image of rather than dropping and being caught, you're actually floating across something, walking on water, using just a lily pad.
Wait, I've got one very similar, and I can't believe all three of us. It's like a trifecta. Mine is also on a plank, except for I slip, right?
Okay,
go ahead, Liz. Go ahead.
Well, so
this is what happens when I get to come on as a MC, host, whatever I'm in. I'm gonna this is how I am, right? I offer that kind of dynamic, isn't that right?
But so Alise, digging back down into that a little bit more, what is it that you offer to help people overcome whatever it is that's holding them back from stepping out onto the first lily pad and then realizing they can walk across them and that they've got farther to go, and not being content with where they're at, but realizing they can achieve more? Dig into that a little bit more around that motivational aspect.
Okay, this is perfect. So the whole reason I'm here in Louisiana is because some colleagues have had invited me to come and talk with a high school here, and to be able to do this program. I call it the Grab Your Gusto program. This is one of the things I offer. And it really is comprised of helping them discover their strengths, helping them to discover their passion, their meaning, and start them down the path of trying to understand their purpose. And so it's really exciting. We would actually be working with 11th graders and, kicking them off through life. So what I've discovered, Wade, is that there's a vast majority of people that are walking through life dead. They just don't know it. They are going through the emotions, and they're just, falling into bed every night, and they keep repeating, rinse and repeat. But they're really not living to their potential, and they're really not living the fullest expression of their person. So they need a catalyst. They need somebody that's going to say, hold on, let me wake you up a little bit here. So much of the work that I'm doing is really first getting people present to what makes you special. This is something only you can do, only you can see. So that's part of the process of uncovering that. And then it speaks to, what do you care about in the world? What's going on in the world that hurts you, that pulls you, that, what can you address, right? Purpose doesn't work unless you're serving some other organization. So once we start to awaken that, and people start to recognize, oh, I can matter. I can actually do more and be more than I really am today. Now we've already taken them out of the dead walk place. And so now they want more, right? But there is an inspirational element here. We have to awaken them to this, out of their stupor, if you will. So part of the whole process in anything that I do is always to be about awakening people out of that stupor and helping them see that there is so much more than what they think they can or be today.
So I want to tangent off, and then we'll come back to this on a couple of fronts, because I'm really excited that you're working with high school age students as well. And I want to talk to you about that a little bit, and then maybe even offline, because of a program that we're launching this summer with one of our sponsors of the show, actually.
Cool.
And there's always some new surprising connection. But I recently read an article that said that there are 7 million young men in particular, between the ages of, I think it was 18 and 24, who have dropped out of the workforce. And many of them, a large segment of them, are living with their parents, sitting in the basement, playing, video games 10, 12 hours a day. And that's what they're doing. And they don't have any hope. There are many, many factors behind this, but are you seeing any of that in your engagement with, some of these organizations that are maybe looking to try to find people to hire, that it's actually hard really to find people, especially in internships and whatnot, the typical entry points that where these young people begin to get interested and excited in a productive life in the working world, right? Any thoughts or comments on that as we conclude this segment before we go to a break and feature another
Heck-
ad for
heck
something you're
yeah.
working on.
Heck yeah, I got a whole other book that describes that whole process, Wade. So, I have another book that's coming out called The Great Revitalization: How Activating Meaning and Purpose Can Radically Enliven Your Business. So, especially the Gen Z, the Gen Z generations, the youngest that we have, plus then the Gen Y, that's the millennials, they will not work without meaning. If you cannot provide them meaningful work and they do not feel that they can feel the heartbeat of your business, they are not going to work for you. So a big part of the reason I wrote that book is that so many leaders are so frustrated going, I don't know what to do. I'm giving them a job. I mean, we've got a great paycheck. We've got great benefits. We're kind of nice around here. I'm sorry. That's still not enough today. So if you can't somehow articulate why your organization matters to the world and the community beyond making a pile of money, those younger generations they're not going to be motivated to join you. So you got to have a compelling cause. So what they're looking for, Wade, is they're looking for, I want to be part of an organization that I can be proud of, that I feel like I belong in, and that I can matter in, and that the work that I'm doing is worth my life. So, they're able to evaluate, the worthiness of their overall life. My parents' couch is a lot better than your conference room, right? And so you got to get that. You've got, as an employer, as a company, to be able to really know, what do you stand for? What do you have to offer? And how is them being part of your world going to make their lives better? And if you can't do that, one, they're never going to come to work for you. And two, they're never going to stay working for you.
Wonderful. So let's dig back into that a little bit more right after this next break. But this next ad is for a book that you're working on with the other guest we had hoped to have tonight that we couldn't with technical difficulties. It's called Potential Realized. Do you want to give a little quick intro to what this ad is about?
Yeah. So, one of the other parts of my life is, we have the meaning of work, but the other part of my major life is identity. And when we think about our identities, which is, who are we and who can we become? Who should we become? That's the question we have so much on our mind. And identity is an important behavior driver. And we are obsessed with our identities, right? So when we can actually think about, and we can look at the possibilities of who we can actually become. I never aspired to do what I'm doing today, and there's so much more that I want to do. So this book is really about helping people recognize that there's a vast potential greater than what they originally imagined about their lives. And it's really a way for them to start to reposition and expand their possibilities of who they can actually become in this life.
Wonderful. Let's go ahead and play that ad.
The power to be more than what you are resides within you, and it's never too late to activate it. This book will focus on finding your potential, creating an impact, and executing the plan to secure a meaningful and prosperous future. It will help you put your ladder against the right wall, the wall that calls your unique gift and is just right for you to climb. Reading it will transform you from the inside out and set you on the path to making the contribution the world sorely needs from you right now. Get ready to become the best version of yourself and pre-register for Potential Realized, an action guide to self-actualization by Dr. Alise Cortez and Stratton Horres at soupllc.com.
So we're going to try something a little bit new here. I haven't done this before. I'm going to show this QR code.
Cool.
So anyone watching, see if you can take your phone up and use the camera and hone in on that little
Let me see.
QR code.
Do it too. Yeah, let me do
And
it too.
Yeah, that should take you to the pre-registration page in Something or Other Publishing's platform, where you can vote for this book. And looky there, someone scanned the QR code. It says it right there here in the studio. So
That's so cool.
This technology is increasingly complex and
There
amazing.
it is. Yep. And there it is. It worked. Brilliant idea.
So I want to then quickly go to a chat and share something else instead. There is your fellow co-author who is watching the show on YouTube and is with us here in spirit. Do you want to take a
Hi,
couple of minutes
Stratton.
in honor of Stratton and tell us how you met him and how it came to be that you began to work on this project together?
Oh, another fun story. So I have a dear friend here in Dallas called Bob Hopkins, and Bob Hopkins is the man about town. Everything he does is gold and beautiful. And he had invited me to a philanthropic celebration at his house where, we were gathering with people who had been part of one of his fundraisers. And it turned out that Stratton and his wife, Debbie, were the hosts. So I had actually already planned to go on to a birthday party that evening. So I was just going to really just drop in quickly and then jet right back out. So I ring the doorbell, the door opens, and the first thing I notice as I walk into the house is the living room is decorated with books. And I went, I like these people already. I already know this is great. So I said that, I'm like, your place is decorated with books. And then Stratton says, oh, wait until you see the library. I'm like, oh, I'm so in for this, right? So he took several of us up to his library and showed, his beautiful books and such. And I was, I went and cased the whole place out and was drinking it all in. And then he said, I'm an author. I said, so am I. And so then it came, I'll give you my book if you give me yours. You give me yours. So then we did that. And then once he kind of glanced through my book, Stratton being Stratton, he'd already written a couple of books. He's like, we should write a book together. And I think, where's the alignment? It's on potential. It's what we can do with our lives. And I went, Now I've never co-written a book before with somebody. Always been a solo venture. So that's how we met. And that was, I think, June of 2022. So we've been crafting this book, and we have a draft form of this book. It's already a living being. It's a baby.
And we're excited about working with you on publishing it along with the other things. So I want to also quickly do the same thing with the QR code here for those who want to pre-order the book that we advertised for you a little bit earlier, just to make sure that it's there also on the YouTube video later as people come in and watch it later, to give them the same opportunity to either vote for the book that's coming out or pre-order the one that has been printed and is on its way to you in Dallas. So if any of the people who have pre-ordered this book already are watching, they should be getting that in the next couple of weeks once the printing and shipping and all that is completed. I want to now go back to what we were talking about right before the break, and that is these 7 million young men and who knows how many young women and others who have lost inspiration. The world has been a difficult, crazy place in recent years. We just got notice that someone scanned the QR code there as well. So good to see that technology works. So the world has been, I'll put it back up in case I took it away too soon for anybody. The world has been a crazy, difficult place. And many people have lost that inspiration. One of the themes of this show that is repeated each week is that religion is intended to inspire and should never coerce. And when it coerces, then it loses its ability to inspire. And it may take a while, especially if it has power over people, and whatever organization is managing the religion, right, which is not necessarily a good thing, but whatever organization is managing the religion begins to use it in some coercive way, it then loses its ability to inspire. How does that relate to what you were just describing in terms of corporations and perhaps everything that has been going on? And we're despite the challenges, America is still a very, very wealthy country, a country in which, certain people, perhaps we could call them privileged, but nonetheless, they're able to sit at home and do nothing except play video games. And they're not forced to, the way in decades and millennia past, you wouldn't survive, right? The forces of nature would make you get off your butt and lose that stupor, as you called it earlier, and get out there and work. It's not necessarily a bad thing that we've advanced as a civilization to allow people to explore their realities in many, many different ways. But how is it that these companies then can or need to inspire versus coerce? How do you help them overcome that stupor of people who don't even really want to work?
Okay, so great question, and we could talk for a long time about that question. But let me start with saying that so many organizations, and it's understandable. I mean, organizations have been designed and organized around efficiency and effectiveness. So they've created this whole system for people to be able to come into the organization, get trained, get promoted, whatever, right? But the problem is it becomes a very, very bureaucratic engine. And in that engine, then, in the process of flowing well, sucks the soul out of people. So much of what I wrote in my other book, The Great Revitalization, is how to have companies stop doing that. So if companies are just saying, hey, you got to come to work here from 8 to 5, you got to do this, you got to do this, people, that's just so demotivating for people. Yes, people want to understand guardrails and being able to understand what's the realm in which they can contribute. But when you keep saying, and you got to go to lunch from 12 to 1, and you gotta, and no, you can't go to your grandmother's funeral, and no, you can't go to your son's soccer game, whatever it is. Well, no wonder people lose their motivation to want to plug themselves into, this organization. Wade, I work for a very, very interesting, successful company. And they told me, they said, Alise, for you to do well here, you have to give yourself over to this firm. I don't want to give myself over to anything unless it's my purpose. And I'm not going to do that. So, if you start to recognize that what we're asking people to do is to give up their souls to be here, well, you can understand why they're saying no thanks to that. So, so much of what we're recognizing as the world is changing and what people want, and I think the pandemic had a tremendous impact here of changing and getting people to shake themselves free of this monotony and this hamster wheel that says this is what you have to do. And so people are now saying, no, I want to be able to have time to dedicate to my health and my relationships. I want to sleep 8 hours at night, please. Thank you very much. I want to be able to know my family, kind of thing. So there's been this really big shift that is making everyone, not just these young people you're talking about, go, I want something different from work. Then if you add in, there's this other component that's happening too, where more and more organizations are recognizing that it's not just about the leadership that's going to drive an organization forward. We have to enroll everybody in an organization. And when people do that way, when people feel like these people are talking to me, they need and want me, right? Now I'm not sitting on the sidelines. I'm an active participant. Well, you can't sit on the couch and do it that way. So it really takes organizations reaching out for individuals to bring them into the fold and say, hey, I see you uniquely and individually. Here's your role. What role do you want to play, kind of thing. It's much more of an agentic, reaching, proactive process than it used to be that you can get away with in the past.
Well, my mind has been painting a picture as you've talked. I'm going to take a minute to share that picture. It went all the way back to the Great Pyramid, right? Pharaoh and the pharaohs who would build pyramids so that they would, have a life in the afterlife, a legacy, if you will. Interestingly, I just read a note that they discovered a new chamber in the Great Pyramid using thermal imaging, which is fascinating to me as a geek of the pyramids. But what I'm talking about here is the modern corporation, or let's say not the modern, but the corporation of your grandfather's day, right, was that kind of an organization, right, where it was a big pyramid and there were slaves that gave their lives to that corporation. And everybody believed in that. And that thing they were doing, that thing they were building did feed all of them, right? And they did believe in it. But the material benefits that were able to be delivered through that method, through sort of perfecting the art of the wage slave corporation, right? Where everyone was dedicated to the taskmasters and everyone would do the bidding of the taskmasters. And if you had smart taskmasters or those who were in some control, cornering some market, able to fulfill and achieve their vision, everyone went along with that because it was, the goose that was laying golden eggs for everybody. But it seems like we've reached a level of material success where people can opt out of that. and they are opting out of that. They are opting out of that. So what does the new model look like? And by the way, I'm asking this question as a Baha'i. You know that I'm a Baha'i, and the Baha'i faith teaches literally that work is worship. That work is worship.
That's how I see it.
Right. And you mentioned at the beginning of the show that you got that from your experience working or having a dad whom you loved and respected. Obviously, he was the one who came in and turned things around for your family, for your mom and yourself, because of the kind of person he was. And I assume that you saw his work ethic as a farmer and then in the restaurant business, and you understood the power of that and the beauty of that. If you choose to do it, it is a form of worship, especially as you point out, if you are finding self-expression through that particular type of work and meaning in it. In other words, a higher transcendent meaning of not just earning money for me, but I'm contributing to society in some way. I'm achieving a goal that's bigger than myself in some way. So unpack for us, what are the next steps in human evolution, if you will, in terms of the corporations or the business types of the future?
Oh, this is so yummy. Okay, so what I did this in my book, the other book that that we're not talking about on this show per se, but it actually spills over into the other book on potential realized. What I did in that book is I put forth about 21 best practices, and I organized them around the old traditional IQ, intellectual quotient, rational practices. How do we actually evaluate what's actually working for us and sucking the soul out of the people or not? Emotional quotient, which is really practices that really are meant to be, emotional intelligence, heart caring based kind of activities, showing people that you care about them, about them individually. And the last frontier right now is really spiritual quotient, SQ. This is actually something that's being measured inside organizations. The more forward-thinking organizations are actually measuring spiritual quotient. And so what that really speaks to from my vantage point is I'm a conscious capitalist. I do believe that we have an opportunity through the business that we do and the work that we do to better and improve the world. And to do that, we have to continue to elevate our thinking, our understanding of our connection to the overall world, where we are in the planet, the universe, and figure out how do we, it's really about echo awakening is the term. And really consider and extend and give the opportunity to our employees to be able to be aware of and thread their own understanding and evolution with and through the organization. You do that, and you can probably get some of those young people off the couch and wanting to come to work for you.
I gotta raise my hand a bit. I have to.
Thought you came back in for a reason, Daniel.
I wanna throw something your way as a form of broad criticism, because I can't help myself. I think, is there any possibility there could be an alternative to the way you've painted that picture? And if you're drawing a blank, let me run one by you, if I may.
Sure.
Okay.
You start, and then I'll see if I can chime in. Yeah.
So I get the trajectory and the vector that you're on and the answer that you're offering society. I get it. And there's a lot of people that are nodding their head. That sounds really great. Okay. But could you not, as a PhD researcher, also look at the competitive nature of corporations and how we had a slow erosion of anything related to a retirement fund or a pension, right? There used to be a situation where you could offer pensions and stability for workers, and it still happens in the public sector, but it doesn't happen in the private sector. Okay, so I'm not talking about the short cycle that everybody loses or changes a job every 8 years. You don't stay at the same job for 30 years. But in kind of like an Occam's razor sort of simplicity type of thing, bring all of this sort of extra sort of narrative thing into the equation, right? On purpose and evaluating I mean, just basically everything that you're talking about. I mean, are you sure that's what they want? Could we not enliven the workforce by just giving back pensions and pulling back some of the power that's in the corporations?
Very interesting question. I would say that no, I don't think if you use the word specifically enliven, no, I don't think that just giving pensions enlivens people. Actually makes them very comfortable, right? And so, what I have witnessed in that, or what I've seen in my research, is pensions are great, they're beautiful, but they don't actually incent people to keep reaching and growing. They incent people to stay with the organization. And so, that's not reaching, that's not growing, right? So there it becomes more of, how do I make sure that I keep my position and stay, then how do I keep adding value so that I get to stay? So it actually, I think it sort of reduces some of the motivation to continue that reach for something higher, including their own competencies.
And if I may add, it seems to me that you're cultivating a culture, a substrate of a culture that is promoting a trajectory of growth for like a large economy. I mean, that's the deontological sort of like explanation for this. That's how it expands out. Is that if we create organizations that are cultivating, striving, and I say like the vehicle for that is purpose and meaning, right? I get that. But if that's the end goal and that's the way to do it, then we have a more vibrant, productive economy and country. Is that kind of the idea?
Yes, absolutely, Daniel. And let me say one other thing that's the premise of this that's important to call out for this conversation. I'm also a logotherapist. Okay, so what that means is I'm steeped in Viktor Frankl's principles. I've gone through his courses and done like master's level work in existential psychology. So if you follow that sort of line of education, and if you accept the premise that according to logotherapy, our number one concern as humankind is to find meaning, and that meaning is our strongest motivation, I do align with that. And that's going to go along your value system. If you value a really big house, okay, then you're going to find meaningful, a really great paying job kind of thing. If you're like me and you value human potential, you value human transformation, you're going to do the work that I do, right? And find that meaningful. So I have to, if I layer that in, and what I find, Daniel, is yes, economic viability is critical. But what I find increasingly, Daniel, over and over again, is people are aching for meaning and purpose. Aching for that. I do believe that if we can answer the meaning and purpose dilemma, we reduce opiate reliance, we reduce the aimlessness, the drive to the couch. And if we can answer the meaning and purpose question, I think that, and it's doesn't require any pharmaceutical intervention. We can do so much with that.
Makes sense.
I'd love to jump in on this and provide a perspective as well. I think, Daniel, you were addressing sort of the societal outcome that the taskmasters would desire, right? That the economy is growing and stable. But then you have the individual that Alise is growing, which is the sort of cellular, granular, atom level, which is each individual person finding meaning. And as a result, you have the other. And you don't have to have some mega taskmaster organizing it all. So what I wanted to quickly highlight was, the experience that I've had around specifically this issue of pensions, which is somewhere in between the big and the small that I just addressed. And two different companies that I've worked in. And by the way, when I was at Deloitte Consulting, we also worked at this kind of thing from a different perspective. What are the major processes that organizations need to follow, large organizations that we worked with, in order to achieve long-term success and even break through from a 10 billion annual revenue to a 20 billion and beyond, right? How do they grow at those levels? I worked on models that actually helped executive management work on that, and have personal experience with pensions in two different companies. So I want to give the two examples. One was a highly regulated company in you might say the financial services and insurance, very stable, highly regulated, and they had pensions, over many decades. And the experience over time was that it became top heavy, and people found out ways to game the system. And as Alise said, They got comfortable. They stayed with the company. They were able to put in less and less work, achieve less and less success for the company. And in the end, the whole thing topples over. It's like Social Security in the United States right now, which one of the reasons it's a problem that 7 million people are exiting the workforce is the Ponzi scheme is collapsing. Social Security is literally a Ponzi scheme. I'm investing my money now to pay for people that were in it previously. So you have to keep getting new people in to pay the early investors off. You follow me? It's literally what Bernie Madoff set up. But it works because it's government controlled and managed, and they can print more money as they need it. But it is literally the definition of a Ponzi scheme. But when the participants of this figure out what the game is and start manipulating it, the whole thing tips over. And for a corporation or a private company, it's doomed to failure. It's doomed to death. So the idea that pensions would somehow solve this problem, the reason there are no pensions is because they don't solve the problem. They create liabilities that cannot be funded over time. So the other way that you do this is you give stock options, even to every employee, so that the employees have the ability to benefit from the success of the overall company. This also fails at scale. Larger companies can't make this work because the people that are getting the options are too far removed from actually being able to meaningfully affect those. And what happens in, for example, 401ks, one large corporation that I know recently canceled all stock to their employees because of class action lawsuits. So the companies that were trying to do the employees a solid by giving them stock in the company, if the stock begins to falter and fail, the employees sue the company because what they were given is no longer worth what they had hoped to get out of it, right? So it's a complex situation, and these simplistic answers, these are complex models. So
they are. And then if we go back to, the topic of this book is really about identity, right? I mean, so now we've woven economics into identity and growth and development, et cetera, and they're all so critically interwoven, right? But at the end, all this comes down to, for me, there's one word that this all boils down to, and it's motivation, right? And so everything that I traffic in is really in motivation. That's my world. That's my jam. What motivates you to come to work, get off that sofa, to give your best, to stay, to persevere? Well, that's you answer that in an organization, gentlemen. Okay, now you got the keys to the castle.
Exactly, which is 100% the alignment with this show around inspiration versus coercion. I want to thank Fuad for this comment here. If you change the retirement age to 70, then that solves it for a while. Right, but look at France, right? You have a whole nation rebelling against the government's effort to solve it by increasing the retirement age. So when you're like really, really a big kahuna like America or China, you can maybe get away with it for a little bit longer, but even entire countries fail over this, right? When they start having hyperinflation, because the expectations of the citizens for that which they have been promised by their political leaders, if those political leaders fail to materialize the promises that they were promised, the entire nation loses its motivation and goes into a death spiral, right? And you have these cyclical crises. So, we're all armchair philosophers, which is good, but these systems are really, really complex.
They are, and that's why this is such a great conversation, gentlemen, because if the system, which is also called culture in organizations, is what drives behavior and decisions and accountability, performance or lack thereof, right? That system is critical to get right. And most organizations are not even aware of the system that they're operating in, and therefore they can't intervene in it. And that's why, for me, the work that I'm doing is helping organizations to get first present, aware, awakened to what is this beast, this culture, this engine that's driving you, and how does that actually align with and serve your purpose What can we pull out of there that's actually stopping you from getting what you want? What can we add in to reinforce and encourage the behaviors that you want? It's critical. I mean, what you're talking about right there is the center smack of it all right there, Wade.
Well, and I lived in Sweden as a child, came back in 6th grade, in the middle of 6th grade, arguing with my fellow students about the superiority of socialism versus capitalism. Of course, I didn't know what I was talking about, but I was in the game. I was in the fight. All I knew is that my life in Sweden was so much better than my life had been in America. And I equated it with their socialist system. Even in 6th grade, I kind of knew enough to at least try to mount that argument, right? I later went to Europe and lived as an adult in a socialist economy for 10 years in Germany. Daniel, you live in a socialist country, Canada. And here in America, we have, half of our population has socialism phobia, right? I don't have socialism phobia. And then we had the communist, the McCarthy era in America. And today we've got these warring factions of contending peoples in our own country over this issue, right? Of the system between, capitalism versus socialism as a false dichotomy. The point I want to make here, Alise, is you're kind of ignoring that. You said conscious capitalism, which is another construct, which we can put aside for a moment. You're kind of even ignoring that. You're really saying, I want to find a way to create organizations which motivate the people at the individual level. Forget about profits, forget about how it scales up. You're tapping into the idea and the belief that if we can get the individual to be motivated on a consistent basis in ways that matter to them, with the freedom of choice for them, not in terms of, being forced into some wage slave situation, but rather if they can be empowered within our organizations, within our corporations to achieve that, meaning and the top of Maslow's pyramid, right? Self-actualization, meaning, however we want to define it, then it'll all work out for everybody anyway, regardless of whether you believe in socialism or capitalism, if you can get the individual motivated. So you're working at the granular level, whereas Daniel, you were maybe earlier approaching it more from a top-down level rather than from a bottom-up level.
Yeah. Even though her work was working with organizations, you're coming up with a plan for the bottom up, right, Alise?
Well, this is great, guys. Not exactly. So it's kind of a mixture of what you're saying here. This is so good, so yummy. So, absolutely. Let's not kid ourselves here. I'm not saying that profit is not important. It's critical. So I'm not at all just saying
blood. If you don't have the blood, the entity dies.
Right. The body doesn't work, man. The
right.
thing doesn't hold up.
Right.
So money is really pretty interesting. You can do a lot of things with money. So I want to make sure I'm very clear. This is not about just the woo-woo world of, let's be all happy at work kind of thing. Got to make a profit. If you don't have a profit, you don't have people. So first, what I want to say is that it's kind of a mixture. It really is a circular mixture. But first, my work always starts at the top of the organization with the leaders trying to figure out what is the purpose, why does this organization exist, and why should anybody care? So it doesn't start just at the bottom with the ground, because individuals don't get, without the company, they don't get to be part of the company. So it's not true that we're just starting with the individuals. We're actually working first with the actual overall segment of the entity. And then we're saying, okay, so with that being, this is your purpose. These are the people that you've attracted to you. Now, what's the stickiness, the connectivity to that? And once we understand that, then we can actually work from the top and from the bottom to be able to get people motivated. So I wouldn't say that I'm only working from the unit granular level. That's why I work with companies, because there's a bigger impact through companies than there are individuals. More people work for a company than they do all by themselves or for themselves like I do. So the reason I work with companies is that I have a better chance to be able to move the needle in the world to improve the way work gets done and is led so that people are fulfilled. We make and do business that betters the world through all those people being turned on and activated.
And we'll put a pin in it for there. We're going to come back. We'll go a little bit overtime tonight because I see that our Our viewer count has gone up considerably. This is obviously meaty stuff for people, but we're gonna quickly go to another ad, which is another one of Dr. Alise Cortez's projects, Passionately Striving and Why. Just give us 30 seconds on what that book is about, or rather, what you did to get that book going, and then we'll show the ad.
So what I wanted to showcase in that book is I wanted to showcase that purpose is available to anyone in the world, regardless of your religion, your economic orientation, or your language. So I literally found women from 25 countries, Australia, Zambia, to share their very intimate story of discovering their purpose and how they're now serving from it today, so that readers feel like, I can relate to this woman. There's a path for me too. They're asking me to come along. And really elevate more people to go after discovering their purpose, honoring it, and serving from it.
Wonderful. And we do not have a QR code for this book, maybe next time. But at the end, there will be an email address. We can go old school. Email us if you'd like to order a copy of this book, or go on Amazon, or put your email address, or contact us somehow, and we will get you that book. Wow.
I love that ad.
You are indeed motivated, and you've produced so many wonderful, I mean, it's amazing. There's like a path, there's like a sea of things growing behind you as you walk across those lily pads, creating as you go. It's really, really amazing when you think about the legacy that you're building and leaving here. So I want to circle back where we were right before the break. I think you were saying you prefer to work with organizations, and you work with the management, but you're still helping the management get those individual granular level people motivated. So I mean, yes, you're going up, but you're helping them look back down and motivate those people to build it, rather than just creating a system and a structure that sort of manage them in a wage slave kind of fashion.
Absolutely. Definitely not that latter thing. No way. Yeah.
So I want to talk to you then just a little bit. Obviously our main sponsor is Something or Other Publishing. You're choosing now to publish through that organization, which we're going to conclude with an ad from them. But their model is a little different, right? It seeks to approach this holistically, seeks to get authors, readers, and service providers into an ecosystem in which they're working together with, as I call it, aligning people on the same side of the tug of war rope. These aren't three different types of parties who are pulling for their own benefit against each other. It's realigning these three types of contributors towards a common goal and a common purpose. So if you look at the traditional book publishing industry, it's really a legacy, 100-year-old model. Jeff Bezos famously, and I don't know how much this is true, but the narrative is that Jeff Bezos left Wall Street because he saw the opportunity to put bookstores out of business by, selling books through Amazon.com. course, he didn't put bookstores out of business, and that's not the only legacy aspect of that industry. He did transform the retail end of it, and he did go direct to consumer, right, as a retailer in ways that individual brick and mortar bookstores couldn't do. But he basically developed an online bookstore. Of course, they have KDP, so that they've also become a publisher and a printer. But they're a monopoly controlling all those pieces. They're not really, I think, integrating these different components. And so the industry has continued the way it has been for hundreds of years. And it throws a few victorious winners to the top, right? The famous Stephen King and J.K. Rowling's, and other famous authors or certain political figures that can produce a blockbuster book. But everyone else is still struggling in the technology-enabled self-publishing world, right? So what has your experience been with Something or Other Publishing in your efforts to get these books out? What's different, and why are you going with them again for your latest book?
Well, thank you for that, Wade. So, the first book that I published with Something or Other Publishing was Passionately Striving in Why. And what I really loved, why that, it's such a perfect venue for these women. So keep in mind, listeners and viewers, I recruited people from Zambia, from Kenya, from Cameroon, from Brazil. They have very different economies, right? So what I love about the model that Soup offers is that it's author driven. So it really does it gives the authors much more ownership and control. It also puts more of that ownership and control on their marketing efforts. But whereas a more traditional publishing house would say, you can fit back into these tight little lines of how you're going to behave and what control you have over your manuscript and your cover, etc. Soup is on the very other end of that. And so it's very, very open. I would say it's one of the smartest models I've ever encountered. So really, for me to be able to go out to these women and invite them to be part of this anthology, they would have never been able to be part of this anthology if they were in their own country, for example. So it's a very democratic sort of offering, if you will. It opens the playing field for authors and gives more people the chance to be an author than they would have on their own. It also requires them to do more to promote their book than they understand that they're supposed to do. So in my view, that also is that empowering, pulling necessary tension that we need as humans to keep us reaching and growing. So it all fits with my philosophy terribly well. It just, the Soup model for me just makes getting my work out into the world easier and frankly faster.
And so to add a little bit of detail around that, the model includes, like the QR code earlier, collecting votes, expressions of interest on the front end, which we call crowdsourcing your readers before you publish, gathering as many people as you can through the platform. And along the way, you're getting a series of homework assignments, right? Teaching you how to hone your product, putting you in contact with potential editors and other inputs into the craft of writing, and what all the other things, because it's not just the inside of the book, it's the outside of the book. Everything about the product itself, giving you more control because it's educating you, right? The reason you become ultimately enslaved, obviously, this is coming from, I'll just say it, coming from a white guy. There are those who are now going to say, I know nothing about slavery, and I'm coming at this from a perspective of privilege. But ultimately, on the grand scale, we end up enslaved due to our ignorance. Ultimately, on the grand scale of things, at an aggregate level over time, people end up becoming enslaved in various ways because of ignorance, because of their inability to somehow compete, protect themselves, whatever it is. Ultimately, ignorance is the root cause of enslavement. And so when we educate our authors, it empowers them to take more control, to be less subservient to the publishing company, right? To become more educated so that they can make good choices. And by the time they get a contract offer, they've been given a number of homework assignments that educate them about what the heck it is that they're now being asked to read. And Something or Other Publishing wants them to go somewhere else. Please go somewhere else if you don't like the model that we have to offer. Because if after everything we've shown you and told you and educated you about, you now realize that there's a better place for you, then we have done our job. But
and
if
it's
you
going to be hard work, right? It's going to be hard work.
Right. But if
I like the idea of the tug of war, right? So Alise is saying I was imagining Alise has the rope. She's tugging on that rope. She's tugging on that rope. And then here comes Dan and here comes Wade. They're coming over. They grab that rope and they're pulling that rope too. But it's Alise's rope.
Right. Exactly. But we're all on the same side of the tug of war rope. But it's our rope, and it's our rope too. Everyone's going to benefit from combining the efforts to make this book a success. So we educate the authors, excuse me, around product, platform, and promotion. Platform being, you have a radio show. You can go out and promote your work. You can bring in other people to work with you, like Stratton on your next book. So all of these are components of trying to build exactly the kind of organization that you've been talking about in terms of motivating all the people and all the stakeholders.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm gonna quickly now go to that ad, and you've been kind of unexpectedly, but it certainly should have been expected, the best advertisement for Something or Other Publishing, because you're now publishing your second and third book, and you have another anthology that you're working on too, because you're not a sexist, so you've done this for women. Now you're doing it for men as well, and it's called Alive. It's called Alive from the Core. Spend just a moment telling about that one, and then we'll go to the ad.
So as Wade said, once I released the anthology of the 25 women that shared their stories of purpose, I thought, wait a minute. There's this whole other segment of the population, call it 50%, that I haven't actually learned about, men. And I thought, gosh, wouldn't it be great to understand how men pursue this idea of purpose? Maybe it's different from women. The social scientist in me wants to know. Plus, I love giving people a microphone. And so I've already seen the experience is very, very different in recruiting men and women. It's a very different experience. So, but I want to see if one, men pursue purpose differently, and two, if we start to understand that the way that they express purpose is different from women. So that's what the project is about, and showcasing that.
Fascinating.
Hello, and welcome to Something or Other Publishing, or as our friends like to call us, SOUP. SOUP is a platform that connects authors, readers, and service providers in one convenient place. Choose SOUP if you're an author with a great book idea and you're looking for a publisher offering hands-on coaching in some of the best royalties in the business. Or if you're a reader who enjoys engaging with celebrated and emerging authors. We already have over 3,000 of them, and more are joining every day. You can even win free books by voting on their book ideas. Or maybe you're a service provider and you're looking to engage with over 3,000 authors. We're here to help. So whether you're an author, a reader, or a service provider, you're in the right place at SOUP. Contact us at help@soupllc.com to learn more.
Well, Alise, it's been just an absolute pleasure, as always, to be talking to you. I want to invite you to peruse the chat. We've shared a few of the comments. And if there's anyone else listening out there, there still might be a few seconds to get a cogent, punchy comment in there that Dr. Cortez will select as the comment of the evening in order to award you a free copy of her book, Coloring Life. And while you're doing that, go ahead.
I've got one. I'm ready.
All right.
So this comment is from a Matterling 1, it looks like. And it's really the comment on, the culture and everything. So when they're really talking about how much maligned millennials who are less willing to stay somewhere they are not happy. What's great about that comment is that it really does speak to both, the first book, which is about loss and overcoming, when you lose a job or you don't want to stay there or whatever. And the second book, which is really much about purpose and realization. It's a very, very thoughtful comment. And to me, that really advances the conversation. It speaks to listening, engaging, contributing something that actually moves the dialogue. So I would take that one for sure.
Awesome. I've displayed that for the audience. Looks like it's AM Sterling one.
Sterling,
now that it's bigger on the screen. The shift in the culture of giving everything to the corporation. Do we have the much maligned millennials who are less willing to stay somewhere they are not happy? So yeah, it speaks to that pendulum swing. I love it. So I think we have her email address if she's not still watching, and we can reach out to her and let her know. Or if she is watching, congratulations. We will get you a copy of Dr. Cortez's new book, Coloring Life, as soon as we get that in-house and send to you. It's being printed as we speak, so it might be a couple of weeks, but we'll get that off to you. Dr. Cortez, Alise, Dan, any final words or comments as we wrap up the show tonight?
She says she's here, by the way, and look at that. Awesome. Final comment from me would be, thank you for just really, Wade, let me just say, I've known you for now 2 decades, and I am a fan of your leadership, your stewardship, your vision. I really believe that you have a very, very special mind. And then you have all this motivation that comes with executing your vision. And I'm grateful that I got to know you 20 some years ago. I'm grateful that I get to work with you on getting my books out and into the world. And then I get to have really interesting conversations like this with you on a pretty regular basis. So I'll leave with that.
Ditto. I'm reminded of our dinner in Dallas last summer, where we got to dive deep into a number of these topics. And it's always enlightening and inspiring to talk with you. You really do help me in ways you probably don't know. And I'll follow up with you afterwards about this thing about high school students and the program that we're developing. We're actually, looks like we're developing it here this summer to expand. We've got places to take this program to Arizona, the Sacramento area, and then down in Florida near Orlando. Maybe we can do something in Dallas as well, working with high school age kids, or let's say kind of 8th through 11th grade is kind of our target in these camp environments and transformational leadership for youth. But I think some of the ideas that you are working on might be well incorporated there as well. We might want to invite you to become a consultant to that project, because
sounds amazing.
I know you've got plenty of spare time between all your other projects.
I'll fit it in, Wade, you bet.
The old saying, if you want to get something done, give it to a busy woman.
Or a busy person in general. Yes, I do know that saying. Yes, true.
All right. Well, thank you so much. It's been an absolute joy and a pleasure. Thank you, Dan, who popped out for launching the show this evening. And we will definitely have you back with or without your co-author, Stratton Horres, who we just got to work out the technology impediment that kept him from joining us tonight. But that just meant we had more time with you, and it's been a wonderful show. Thank you so much.
Likewise. Thank you so much, Wade.